Take a moment to ask yourself this question. What is the most important thing on your new bike? Brakes. The answer is brakes. Did you guess right? If not, you're part of the reason manufacturers often skimp on brakes, putting on a lower grade brake set than the rest of your other components. And the mechanic who assembles it, well, they're playing brake roulette with your setup. Near enough is good enough. All this to keep their overheads down. Ironic, right? You'd think they want you to stay alive to spend more money on future bikes. Welcome to stage 12 of Tour de Bike 2024, where I'm going to show you that money doesn't buy good braking. Proper setup does. In stage 11, I showed you the foundations of quiet braking. Now I'm going to reveal the easiest way I've found to set up disc brakes. Spoiler alert, it works for rim brakes too. Stick around, I've got a ton of tips to further reduce the risk of noisy brakes, but more importantly, to keep you safe and confident when it counts most. And of course, I'll be sharing my pro tips for where you should actually spend your money if you want to dramatically improve your current braking system. So buckle your toe straps, let's get these brakes working perfectly right now. You've just got to become the bike. Let's start with the front brake because that's the most important one of the two brakes. Give the rotor a quick clean while it's in the bike. You can see this one's way off. There's a good gap between the pad and the rotor on the right hand side, but the left hand one is pretty much brushing the rotor. So let's reset this. Undo both the left hand and the right hand pad adjusting screws all the way to give us the most amount of room to see what's going on. Now undo both of the fixing bolts that hold the caliper onto the forks. This will allow the caliper to float around so that we can move it using the pad adjusters. In fact, I'm just going to take the caliper off quickly to give you a better view of the differing positions of the pads before any adjustments have been made. If we take a look at this, the right hand pad has quite a bit of friction material showing, whereas the left one is only just breaching the gap of the disc caliper. If we just set it up straight from here with the same adjustment on each side, it wouldn't end up in the center. Now we're going to centralize the caliper over the rotor to get equal force and contact from each pad. If one pad is pushing the disc towards the other, it will be bending the rotor and make the pads judder in the caliper. It goes without saying, this will reduce the quality of your braking and increase the likelihood of horrible noises. As there's a smaller amount of pads sticking out on the left side, this is where we're going to start. Screw the left hand adjuster in until the pad touches the rotor and the rotor is in the middle of the caliper. Go to the other side of the bike and then screw the right hand pad adjuster in so it's more or less touches the rotor as well. We still want a little bit of movement left here. Now get the cable adjuster and tighten that up so it closes the pads right up, holding the rotor still. You can see that the caliper doesn't move and the rotor is in the middle of the caliper. While it's in that position, tighten up the bolts that hold the caliper to the adapter or fork mounts. There's no need to do them up completely. We just want to get them to keep the caliper in the correct central position and make our adjustments. When we're finally happy the brake is set up, we'll do the final tighten. Now I'm just going to go back to the adjuster for the cable and back it off a little bit. Go to one of the brake pad adjusters and back it off a little bit so that you can just see a bit of light between the disc pad and the rotor. Do the same thing to the other side. Now there's enough room for the rotor to spin freely in between the pads without touching either of them. Give the wheel a spin and see if the rotor brushes the pads. Once you're happy with the distance between the pads and the rotor, squeeze the brake lever and pull it so it grabs onto the rotor. This will help to stop the caliper moving while doing up the bolts that retain the caliper to the adapter or the fork. Make any further adjustments that you think necessary using either of the adjusters for the pads. Maybe if you wanted it a little bit looser or a little bit tighter, you can do that with the cable adjuster. For a hydraulic disc brake, undo the fixing bolts so the caliper floats about. The adjuster that I'm going to use to tighten the caliper up on this is the brake lever. Pull the brake lever so the pads hold the rotor tight. This centralizes the caliper up on the disc. Tighten up the fixing bolts, and if it's not perfectly spaced when you're done, it will be pretty close. All you'll need to maybe do is just back off one of the bolts and move the caliper ever so slightly to get it perfectly central. If you feel like you're getting benefit from this, please share it with someone else you think would benefit from it as well. Let's look at how to do it on a rim brake for a road bike. Fundamentally, this is exactly the same process you need to do on any type of brake on a bike. After all, a rim brake is only a big disc brake. If it has something that grabs a rotor or a rim, which Mavic call a disc, set the brake up while it's on. Use the tension of the cable to actually make the pad move to where you want it to. Pull the lever, any exposed inner cable, or use the barrel adjuster. Set the pads in the correct position and then just release the cable a little bit and you're good to go. This angles the pad so it is the same as the rim. It's not just hitting the top or the bottom first, give you the maximum amount of brake pad contact on the rim. To tow it in, if I can't just do that with my hands, I slide something underneath the back of the pad and pull the cable on. This will make the back of the pad just stick out off the rim a little bit. Lock it up and just check that it's okay. It'll be pretty close and may need some minor adjustments. Get the rear brake done exactly the same way that we did the front brake. It's now time to get out on the road and bed these brake pads in. When we get back, I'm going to share my top tips for making your brakes even better. Find a place where you can run down a slope and there's not too much traffic or anything like that. There is no need to turn this into an interval session. Just roll down the slope and do one brake at a time. Get up to about 15 to 20 miles an hour at the most. Pull the brake on until the bike comes to 5 miles an hour. You don't want the bike to come to a stop. This will lay a bit of material from the pads onto the rotor and warm them up at the same time. Repeat maybe 10, 12 or 15 times. You'll know when it's done because you'll start to feel the grip of the pad on the rotor. It will also sound like the pads are gripping the rotor. Now I'm going to ride back up the hill and do the rear one. Gosh, this one's making quite a lot of noise. But don't worry about that, they often squeal before they go quiet. Can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Keep riding, pulling the brake on, not letting the bike stop, and eventually the squeal will go away. It won't even feel like it's working while it's squealing, so it shouldn't be any surprise the brake will feel like it is gripping when the squealing stops. Top tip, if it doesn't work completely after the 15 hits on the brake, come back, put the kettle on, have a brew while the rotor cools down and repeat. Want your current brakes dramatically improved without breaking the bank? Here's where I'd spend my money on any type of disc brake. Get better quality rotors. They'll be straighter, more durable and dissipate the heat faster. Fitting bigger rotors than your bike came with will give you more power, modulation and reduce the heat build-up even further. You'll need to get the corresponding adapters to fit them too. Had any aha moments? Drop them in the comments. If you're on a budget, do the front one first, as this will give you the most improvement on a normal bike. When you brake, the weight distribution of you and the bike shifts forward. So the bias of the brakes should really be 70 to 30 towards the front. Don't forget, you can hit the like button anytime you want. Next up is stage 13 of Tour de Bike 2024. We'll be diving into the first of the 2 gear adjustment areas, rear derailleur setup. This stage will focus on getting those range screws and adjusters dialed in perfectly. Trust me, you need to get these right for any chance at smooth, successful gear indexing. If you're ready to make your bike shift as flawlessly as it now stops, you won't want to miss out on this one. As always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss out on what's coming up next. And I'll see you at stage 13 of Tour de Bike 2024.